afternoon. A very happy Vijay Dashmi to you. Happy Dashera. Today is the 10th day of the celebrations that we have in India to celebrate the victory of good over evil. And to be able to take the right decisions, wisdom is very important. Wisdom can come from people, can come from leaders. Wisdom often comes from books. So today, on this special day of Dashera and Vijay Dashmi, wisdom will help us get to a point where we are able to take the right decisions. Let me welcome all of you to the India, Sri Lanka and Maldives launch of a movement called the Rule of Five. We are here to celebrate and launch the book and do a conversation with the author and a leader from corporate India who continues to invent and reinvent himself. Let me first welcome Mr. Shivakumar. He's the Group Executive President, Corporate Strategy and Business Development, Aditya Birla Group. In his role, he also leads some of Aditya Birla Group's businesses. Welcome, Shiv. Shiv is very celebrated. He's been the chairman of Pepsi in India, chairman of Philips, chairman of Nokia. And you know, one thing about Shiv is whatever he commits, he's able to do it in time. I don't know how he manages to read books, to be able to be at events, to teach courses, to be the chairman of an IMF, and so on and so forth. He's able to keep all his commitments and do them with the same amount of consistency. So welcome, Shiv. Clearly, you can tell us a bit about leadership and leading from the front. Let me also welcome a very special person who's had a journey from Canada to Japan, and now the journey continues in India, and he'll talk to us about his special journey. Mr. Paul Dupuis, who's the MD and CEO of Randstad India and the author of the Rule of Five. So the Rule of Five has been published in India by a very preeminent publisher that we all know. And at the end of the event, the publisher will tell us about how the book came about and the future of the book. So let me welcome Mr. Paul Dupuis. Thank you, Paul. Happy Dashera. You're dressed in Indian gear. You're very Indian, you know.
Thank you.
When in Rome, do as the Romans do. So
you bet.
The book Rule of Five was originally conceived as, as the E5 movement. It is about leadership. It was about 5 E's that can help you lead better. So first of all, let me really show the book. I love the cover. It's a very vibrant and simple cover. So welcome to the launch of the Rule of Five book.
Thank you.
So
Thank
congratulations,
you so much.
Paul. We're launching your book on a very auspicious day. I'm sure it will sell very well. This is a day that marks the start of a very auspicious season, which means weddings, which means buying of new homes, new cars, hopefully a lot of books, including yours. And it is an auspicious time to do anything. So thank you for starting this conversation about leadership and the Rule of Five on Dashera. And thank you, Shiv, for joining. And Paul, I'd like to congratulate you for writing this book and living this book. I'd like you to, I normally say that PowerPoint presentations are made by people who are neither powerful nor have a point of view, but you're an exception to that, Paul. So go ahead, tell us about the book and do make that PowerPoint presentation on what the 5 rules are.
I will. Thank you, Annurag. Thank you so much, and Shiv, for joining us today on this special day. And at first, I need to begin with a very special greeting from Bangalore here. Dashare ki hardik shubha kamnaye. And I wish you all the best on this special day, Dashera. In fact, Annurag and Shiv, I did puja this morning here in Bangalore, and we did the full menu, the full course, including our car and so on. We prayed for good health, of course. And I absolutely believe that good does triumph over evil, and the exceptional leaders I've met over the years also share that same value. So I will share a bit about my journey, and then we can get into more of a discussion. So let me begin to set some context for the book. The Rule of Five, as Annurag mentioned, the book was actually born out of this idea that we all have had a journey as leaders. All of us have had experiences which are unique to us, And I reflected a bit on my own journey, particularly as it's led me here to incredible India over the years. I was looking back and wanted to share a bit about my journey. And I'll do that today. The journey began in Canada. I'm originally from Windsor, Ontario in Canada. If you know Canada, that's south of Toronto, right on the border across from Detroit. And Windsor is actually the automotive capital of Canada. So it's no surprise that there's lots of industry in the town related to automotive. During my university years, I worked at Chrysler on the assembly line as a welder. And that's how I paid my way through university. I learned some pretty valuable life lessons, but also some lessons about leadership, and the value of hard work, of course, at Chrysler as a spot welder. One of the things I learned was this idea of constant improvement. I'll talk about Kaizen later and how my journey took me to Japan, where I ended up living for almost 25 years. But the roots of my discoveries about leadership, about improvement and so on were really built on the assembly line at Chrysler. And that was back in the days of the Iacocca and the minivan. The very first minivan ever built was in Windsor, Ontario by Chrysler. In 1990 was a pivotal moment in my journey. I was very into the martial arts growing up in Canada. And as I was welding on the assembly line, those long shifts, I had time to think about my future, what I wanted to do. And I had this deep curiosity to go and see the world. While most of my friends were going towards Europe, I wanted to go to Asia. And so I ended up going to Osaka, Japan, September 1990, 22 years old. That's the young fella on the left. So you can do the math, 30 years ago. And I arrived in Osaka, and this was pre-internet days, no place to stay, didn't speak a word of Japanese, and I had $300 Canadian, my life savings in my pocket, and a green suit that I saved up to buy for my job interviews. And off I went with a 6-month plan. Well, Japan ended up being a very important part of my life. I fell in love with Japan. The 6 months turned into 5 years, and then beyond. I've been back and forth to Japan now for 25 years. And I studied karate. That's where I learned Japanese, and one word at a time. But I also learned about leadership. And in the book, The Rule of 5, I talk about some lessons from, of course, business, my business experience in Japan, but also from the karate dojo. I was able to learn Japanese, learn about the culture, and also get my 3rd degree black belt. And I competed at a national level. And I was the first non-Japanese to attain that level. But again, more importantly, I learned a lot about the spirit and leadership in the Japanese context. I also found my calling. And, I believe all leaders have guiding principles. I'm sure Shiv would agree. We all have something we believe in strongly. Some call it the true north. It's who you are. And for me, my mantra is do well and do good. I discovered Cambodia in 1991 on a bit of a whim, a trip we made with a friend in 1991. That was during the time of the Khmer Rouge, when Pol Pot was still in power. And I fell in love with Cambodia. As serendipity has it, many years later, I got involved with a Canadian NPO called Hope International. And then I eventually became the chairman of Hope, based out of Japan. And I was doing a lot of work in Cambodia and other locations, helping the extreme poor become, or the neglected poor become self-reliant. Then the next fork in the road came in 2017, which brought me to India. I was managing director in Japan of Randstad. We're the world's largest staffing company. We're all about people and helping people get gainful employment. And things were going quite well in Japan. And then I had the opportunity to challenge something new. And I was asked, how about India? To make a very long story short, we moved here. The day we arrived was the day after demonetization was announced in India. And of course, I'd never heard the word. I don't think it existed, at least in the normal, it was in the dictionary, but it wasn't a word used in normal conversation. So I had to get it defined. But I saw it simply as people lining around the blocks at banks trying to get their cash. What an interesting moment to arrive in India, followed by the massive IT layoffs. I've been in incredible India now for about 3.5 years. Leadership has been something that I've been very passionate about for a very long time. I've studied it, I practice it, of course, read about it. And learning along the way, I've learned from other leaders. And what's interesting is as I cross borders, and I've led in all these countries and beyond, of course, being part of a global company with our world headquarters in Amsterdam, I have the opportunity also to be involved at the global level and encountering with other leaders. What I've discovered that, in fact, there's an X factor when it comes to truly exceptional leadership. And that's really what this book is about. It's It's about exceptional leadership. It's about the leaders that I've worked with, that I've observed personally, but also across history, and what ties them together to be exceptional. And the simple line between, let's say, exceptional and competent is the game-changing element. So the exceptional leader aims to change the game. The competent manager, and we need competent managers, they're the ones who deliver on the expectation. They meet the KPIs, they follow the processes, and they do what's expected. And we absolutely need them. In fact, I would argue that the large majority of leaders among us are competent managers. But the game-changing leader creates a new game, invents the new game, finds that new space, and leads the team forward towards it. They create movements. So out of that, my ideas of leadership were born. The true story is that I was at London Business School about 4 years ago, studying as part of a Randstad program on something called transformational leadership. Very appropriate under the circumstances. And we were talking about our definition of exceptional leadership. And the coach who was assigned to me asked me that question in one of our sessions. Paul, how would you define exceptional leadership? It's a big question. I encourage everyone who's watching today to think about that yourself. How would you define exceptional leadership? And by the way, there's no one definition. I think if you sat 10 leaders in a room, you would probably get 10 different definitions, but there would be a common thread or a common denominator. And I had thoughts about this, and I started to explain my ideas about exceptional leadership. And he said, when I was finished, you should write a book. It's the first time in my life I've been told that. Frankly, Annurag and Shiv, I never imagined I would write a book, but that was the first nudge I received. After that, I was encouraged by others to do the same. So here's the model. It's about 5 wheels. The first wheel is about envision. Envision is about coming up with the why, the greater purpose, the North Star, your true north, why you exist. And I think where many leaders get this wrong is they focus too much on the what. So in the book, I talk about how to, and I give real examples of leaders, again, across history, across genres, who had a powerful, compelling vision. And then, of course, they took that vision forward and eventually led teams to bring it to life. And that's in sports, in politics, in the arts, and of course, in business as well. So it begins with a vision that touches the hearts and the minds. It's about purpose. Next, once that carefully crafted vision is ready to go, the leader needs to walk out the door and express it to the world. And this is, again, where some leaders struggle. Some are very good at crafting the vision, but have a hard time expressing it in a way where people digest and absorb. And so this is where I talk in the book about the omni-channel, lessons we learned from omni-channel marketing, for example, on how to take an omni-channel approach to expressing that compelling vision, to get the wheels moving, to start creating the momentum of that movement. And of course, when that happens, it leads to a very important point, which is excite. People start to lean in. They start to become interested. They start to speak the language of the leader. And they start to say things like, when can we start? How can I be involved? And that's a very special moment for any leader. And of course, the fourth one, and I will tell you, this is where I'm at in my own leadership journey. I'm focusing heavily on leader as enabler. When I talk about leader as enabler, what I'm really talking about is creating an arena, a platform, an environment where the team can shine. And for many of us as leaders who grew up doing, this is actually a moment where we need to let go. And sometimes the leader simply needs to get out of the way. So enable the teams to shine, give them the tools they need, the support, the coaching, and so on. And then ultimately, when you get those 4 right, this is the ultimate measurement of effective and exceptional leadership, is execution. Of course, there are measurable results. In a business environment, we talk about measurable output, whether it's revenue, gross profit, EBITDA, and so on. Of course, that's a key deliverable. If you back up, if you get the first 4 right, the 5th one comes naturally. And so in the book, I talk about each of the 5 E's. I also talk about some of my own personal experiences in my journey growing up in Canada, what I've learned as an ice hockey player in Canada, and also my experiences in Japan, living in Singapore, working in countries around Asia Pacific, and of course, here in India as well. That's the model, and that's the movement that I'm aiming to create with this book. In the book, there's a quote from me, where I say exceptional leadership requires exceptional behavior. If I have to conclude what is one common denominator around the world, across genres and arenas that ties together the exceptional leaders, clearly they showed an exceptional level of behavior. a fanatic discipline, as Jim Collins talks about in Good to Great, a commitment, unwavering commitment, and the fierce resilience that's required to lead teams forward. And it's always focused on the why. So I believe if you ask me what is one key quality that all exceptional leaders have, they show exceptional behavior. On that note, I'll go back to you, Annurag, and look forward to a discussion.
Thank you so much, Paul, for that. It was powerful, and there was a point of view that came across through your journey. So clearly I stand corrected there. But, Shiv, you read the book, you reviewed the book, and you're a prolific reader. And you're not just a reader, as a leader, you implement some of those. But let me start by asking you, Shiv, what do you think of Paul's leadership formula, the rule of 5? And how is it relevant in the current scenario? And according to you, which one of the rule of 5 would you use in your leadership and in your life subconsciously, even without reading the book?
Yeah, thanks, Annurag. I read the book about 2 months ago, okay, and I also summarized it for LinkedIn. I really like the book. I think Paul makes a great point in taking us through the 5 steps of good leadership or great leadership, which is envisioning, expressing, exciting, enabling, and execution. You asked me how is it relevant to today's world? I think the world we live in a post-COVID world will require all 5 of them. I think every single employee who works for us will want the leader to chart out what that vision he has for the company or the ecosystem, and then express it succinctly, and then excite the employees about the future, and down to the wire to execute it very well. So I think it's a book which is extremely relevant, even more relevant for today's time. And I really compliment Paul for having worked this through. I really like the simple framework and the many examples and the thought-provoking ideas that Paul has in his book.
Thank you so much, Shiv. Now, Shiv, tell us, leadership styles existed before March, before COVID, and there's some laws of leadership are eternal. It is about being compassionate, about being caring, about leading from the front, about being authentic, about now being vulnerable. Tell us, what are the new rules of leadership that have got added that resonate with this framework of the rule of 5?
I would say 3 things have definitely come to the table, Annurag. The first is agility. I think agility is absolutely important. In the past, and we have valued as companies and societies and thinkers, we valued strategic ability. I think now in the current situation, we will value strategic agility. I think that's absolutely critical in my book. Second is the focus on speed. I think if there's one thing the pandemic has taught everybody, thanks to the webinars like this, etc., everybody is able to come to the table and quickly take decisions and move forward. If you look at India today, many companies have launched lots of products by short-circuiting their normal processes. So a process which would have taken them 6 months to launch a new product, today they've done it in 2 weeks. And the last and most important, I think, very definitive value which is required right now is ecosystem collaboration. I think everybody has recognized that we cannot do things on our own. We need the whole of society. We need the whole of our business partners if we need to succeed. So I would say agility, speed, and ecosystem collaboration are 3 things which have been added to the leadership repertoire of the past. The authenticity, etc., is an almost given to.
Thank you so much. Paul, it was fascinating to again know about your journey, which I know about, but I discovered something new. Now, in your book and in your life, you talk about the concept of Kaizen, which is continuous improvement as a leader striving to understand, say, millennials better, the environment better, and re-equip yourself. And, books are a great way to learn wisdom, other is experience. And in India, we talk of jugaad, we talk of, frugal innovation. I call it frugal innovation, you can call it jugaad. So tell us in your book, how does, that link between Kaizen and jugaad exist? And how do you see this manifesting in your 5 rules?
Thank you, Annurag. It's a great question. So first of all, let's talk a little bit about Kaizen. I'm sure everyone has heard of Kaizen. Many people have become quite proficient in things like lean manufacturing and lean processes and so on. I first had a taste of Kaizen at Chrysler on the assembly line, as I said earlier. It was born out of the Toyota production system where we actually had quality control circles at the end of our shifts. So imagine this, a bunch of welders in full gear at the end of a shift, gathering around a table next to the assembly line at the end of the shift to share ideas on how we could make our processes more efficient. Okay, and then ideas, of course, were rewarded. So there was a culture built of let's move towards efficiency together and reward and recognize that. Fast forward to Japan, well, I had a firsthand taste for many, many years of this spirit of Kaizen, which I think is very strong in Japan across borders, regardless of whether you're talking about in the educational system or in business. And it's really about identifying a couple of things. One is something called muda, and muda is waste. And we talk about waste, there's waste of time, there's waste of resources, there's waste of effort, there's also waste of skill. And exceptional leaders know that in order to bring that vision to life, they need to leverage the knowledge, the skills, and of course, the motivation of the team. So it's about removing barriers, it's about removing bottlenecks, but it's also heavily focused on quality, consistency, incremental improvement, very strong focus on the goal and so on, timelines. So that's Kaizen. Then of course I came to India and I had never heard of Jugaad until I arrived in India. But I saw it all around me. You know, I have the good fortune of traveling across the four corners of India. Randstad has offices across the four corners in 23 locations from Guwahati all the way down to Cochin. And so I'm constantly on airplanes and taxis and traveling around through cities and meeting people. And I've been able to see firsthand the spirit of Jugaad. Jugaad to me is about ingenuity and creativity. It's about leveraging the resources you have to get the job done. And sometimes maybe you need to cut corners and so on, but anyway, you achieve the goal. And I look at Jugaad in a positive light. And I know there's different opinions about Jugaad, but I would suggest that if you could take that focus on process and efficiency and so on from Kaizen and marry it with this spirit of Jugaad, this creativity and ingenuity, if you could bring those two together, that would be an amazing combination. And that's something that I've been trying to bring as a leader to India here. And I will tell you, we're seeing progress. I think they go along hand in hand, although they are extreme in many ways. When you bring those two together, possibilities are incredible.
Thank you so much, Paul. Now, Shiv, you heard Paul speaking and you read the book and you read other books on leadership too. I'm on your mailing list of the reviews and I make it a point to read the books that you strongly recommend. Not all, but most of them I end up buying somehow. So tell us, when a reader, whether he or she is an entrepreneur, whether he or she is an intrapreneur, which means a senior leader within an organization, taking decisions that impact the destiny of other colleagues, what is it that one thing that attracts you? Already said it is a simple framework, it is very relatable and applicable. But why should somebody buy Shiv's book or Paul's book or read it?
Yeah, so I think there are many reasons to buy the book. I think here's a leader who's traversed both the Western world as well as the Eastern world. So if you look at old management theory, a lot of old management theory was based out of America. All the big thinkers were from America. So the early management theorists were the Agarans of this world, the Peter Druckers of the world, the Michael Porters of the world, etc. Then around mid-1980s, we had Kenichi Ome, who wrote that book. And then suddenly we had a lot of Eastern people coming up and writing books, like C.K. Prahlad, as an example, or Ram Charan. C.K. and Ram Charan, of course, lived in America, but with Eastern background. Now, here's somebody like Paul, who has a Western background, has lived most of his life in the Eastern world, learned from the experiences there. He's lived in possibly two of the biggest markets, Japan and India. Very different markets, but very, very important markets for the world economy. So I think his perspective, is very different from all the other perspectives that I've seen, either of a Western-led lens or a completely Eastern-led lens. I think that's the reason I like this book.
Thank you so much. And Shiv, in your remarkable journey where you've led companies in large organizations and other leaders, then give us examples of exemplary leaders that stood abroad, and why are they so, fresh in your mind even today? Give us one or two anecdotes and examples.
Yeah, if I would say, if I even look at the last 20 years as a time frame when possibly most of us will remember leadership, I would say Mandela tops that list. I think Mandela tops that list for most people, whether you're in business, whether you're in sport, whether you are in politics, Mandela would top that list. The reason he would top that list was he united a country which was hell-bent on not being united. He united a country by pardoning all the people who put him into jail for 27 years. Remarkable. The most important thing of Mandela is he didn't look back. He looked forward. And he said, we need to make South Africa great. The other reason why people will remember Mandela is he did his term, 5 years, finished, walked off into the sunset saying, thank you, I've had a great time. The other person I think we would all cherish in the last 20 years is President Obama. I think for his sheer oratory skills and for sheer trying to do the very best to unite an already divided country. Now, if I look at the current crop over the last 2-3 years, Jacinda Ardern in New Zealand is a great example of doing the right thing and getting re-elected handsomely. She's got re-elected with the best margin ever. She embraced Muslims when there was a challenge in one of the places of worship. Okay, she took very decisive action on COVID. Same thing with Angela Merkel. She embraced immigrants. She took tough stand on COVID. She took a tough stance on Brexit. She did all the right things which you expect of leaders. And I think that's the lesson I would take. These 4 leaders, 2 women and 2 men, are possibly outstanding examples for each and every one of us to be proud of.
Fantastic, Shiv. And in contemporary leaders that you've interacted personally, one name that you really look up to?
There are lots of people, see, you have thought leaders at one end, like Mr. Ramcharan. He's been my mentor for about 25 years now. Okay, and every time he's in Delhi or Bombay, he says, let's have a cup of tea. And whenever I sit with him, I get a fresh peek into how to look at different businesses, different institutions, etc. So he's somebody I genuinely believe is a very, very honest, authentic, and excellent thought leader.
Thank you, Shiv.
Annurag, let me ask you a question, if you're okay. You lead quite an organization, and I have to say, and I'm sure Shiv would agree, it's remarkable how you've transformed yourself and BW Businessworld during this crisis from face-to-face in-person events to, I think you're the king of virtual events now. Incredible, the sheer volume and the quality that you do. At the same time, your leadership style is special to you. Tell us about your leadership style and how you've
Paul, I think you're being very kind to me. I have a long way to go. I have a lot of things to improve. I'm happy with what we've achieved, and I'm grateful to my team for what we've achieved in the last 7 months. Because of focus here, if I had to use one word, focus. And once you see the results of focus, you get hooked on. But we have a long way to go. And I think over the next 18 to 24 months, I want to achieve some things that may sound very daunting and very big. But I want to be India's #1 business media platform in terms of the impact editorially in number of people. We reach out to 30 million plus on the site every month. But there is a site that does 100 million. I'd like to be more than 100 million in 18 to 24 months. In revenues, I'd like to be more than 100 crores in turnover with 40% profitability. But most importantly, in the editorial impact, I want to build, there is a still long way to improve in every area of what we do. So my leadership style is of being authentic. I'm telling you what, we have a lot. And last 6 years were unique. I have a great brand in Businessworld. I think I can do even better than with the brand. And in the last 7 months, because of hierarchies being broken, within my company, I've found heroes and leaders who've done amazing work, and I've seen them in new light. And I'm more hopeful about my company than I ever was. But my biggest ambition, and I'll talk about that, because if you want to achieve something, then you have to align your thought process. You have to learn from the 5 rules, is to be India's voice in the business arena, in the world. And it will take me some time, but over the next 3 years, I want to promise you and Shiv that, my favorite business product is the Financial Times, then is Bloomberg Business Week, then is Wall Street Journal, then is Fortune, Forbes. I read The Economist, but it is my number 7 product. for various reasons. I want to make sure we call Businessworld. We should be in 20 markets in the world. If then Forbes and Fortune can be. But I need to fix a lot of things over the next 7 months to be able to make that leap. So my vision in the next 3 years is to be India's voice in the globe, and it's a very, it's a very big task, but I have no doubt we'll be able to do. I acquired a company 7 years back, which existed for 33 years, and I struggled. Part of them were my own mistakes. Part of it was environment. Part of them, it's just, it's how God plans for you. I think I'm the same person, but my focus is very much there. And I'm able to do a lot more because I don't waste time. You talked of wastage, muda. So my muda has minimized, okay? So I think that is the biggest. And what has happened is once colleagues also see success of a role. And I think there are two diverse things happening. One, I'm very clear on what I want to do. Second, I'm much more into listening when it comes to my colleagues. I listen to their ideas and implement much more than I did ever before. And, as with my first company, I want to say in 18 to 24 months, I will not have an operational role at my company. I don't have an operational role at Exchange for Media. In Businessworld, over the next 18 to 24 months, I will set the vision, I'll set the strategy, but I'll bring more professionals and work with the existing team to be able to build something which is impactful and outlasts me. So that will determine that I adopt all the 5 rules that you outlined in your book. And the biggest is focus. Second is empathy. And you talk of envision and express. I let people express even if I don't like it. And trust me, once you start getting used to getting ideas from people without they being afraid, it creates magic. So I think I've also been very lucky last 7 months. I mean, Shiv has given his time to us. Paul, you've given it. So the industry has really helped us. But qualitatively and quantitatively, the success of last 7 months has only made us eager for improving even more. And you talked of Kaizen. I think we have a long way to improve in every aspect. But I promise you in like 7 to 10 months, we'll be a different company, different numbers, different impact. And quality and perfection will be the focus. Less will be more, but we'll do it bigger, better, deeper.
Yeah, what a wonderful answer. And inspirational as well. And you mentioned something about learning, falling down and getting back up. It's one of the things I observe in my book. And by the way, no exceptional leader was born an exceptional leader. I argue in the book that leadership can be learned. It's a muscle that we build. But as Arnold Schwarzenegger said famously, you don't get in shape by walking in the gym. You got to walk in the gym and do the work. And I think leadership is exactly the same. So when we make mistakes or we fall down, it's so important to learn and then get stronger as a result. So that's a great answer. Thank you so much.
And I want to say to Shiv and you that I'm more comfortable. I'm much more comfortable with myself. I know what I'm very critical on myself, but I also know where my strengths are. I've not said this. It's a very ambitious task. But hopefully, finally, I'll be able to raise capital, align people. And more importantly, when the founder's discipline also impacts the company. So I have become much more disciplined and focused than I ever was in life, in anything I do. So I think, I learn from when I do these webinars, it's funny, I learned so much. The audiences may learn, but all observing you in terms of kindness, in terms of passion, in terms of just being authentic and being nice to people. You're right. Do great, do good. I think I see you doing. Shiv contributed so much to everyone you talk to about Shiv. They will tell you Shiv agreed to do something and did it perfectly well. And I've seen that, whether it's a book review, whether it's an event. He's fully in and he makes time. It's just, I wish when I grow up, I'm a combination of both of you. I'm confused. When I grow up, I want to be like Paul Dupuis or I want to be like Shiv.
Yeah, I have a question for Paul. Paul, in your book, you talk about a unique model called STOP.
Yes.
Okay, can you really elaborate that for our audience, please?
Sure. Well, that brings me way back, Shiv, to back in my teenage years. I was in the cadets, the Army cadets. And I had ideas of maybe going into the Army, regular forces in my future at that point. And so I was around 16 years old, I guess it was 16, 17. And I participated in a survival course called Outward Bound. And there's the let's say the version that you and I could participate in now, Outward Bound. They do corporate versions, but this was the military version of Outward Bound, which was very challenging in terms of discipline. And it was also about pushing you beyond your limits. It was an 8 week course where we were living in the forests of Northern Ontario. It's bear country. I mean, if you talk about Northern Canada, really barren. And we were basically living in tents for the entire time. And we had missions along the way. And these missions were designed to be a surprise every time they came because they were simulating a survival environment. And one of the missions was something called Mission Solo. And I talk about it in the book, so I won't get into too much detail because it's quite an interesting story about what happened, but how we were pulled out of our tents at 3 o'clock in the morning and sent off basically into the forest alone for 3 days by yourself. And one of the things we learned about when you're facing a crisis and everything that comes with crisis, like we're experiencing right now, fear, ambiguity, the adversity, the doubt, and so on, that it's important first to take a deep breath and to follow the STOP model of leadership. It's called STOP. S is for stop and take a deep breath, collect yourself. Secondly, T is think about your options, think about the current situation, quietly observe your environment. If we talk about a SWOT analysis, look at your strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities and threats, observe. And then P is plan. So it's stop, think, observe, plan. And I have to tell you, Shiv, I've ever since I've learned that, because I learned it when I was dropped into the jungle at 3 a.m. alone with no food and water, and they said, see you in 3 days. That STOP model has come in handy to me so many times through my journey, whether it was when I first arrived in Japan in 1990, I slept on a park bench for my first night. I didn't know anybody. As I said earlier, I didn't speak Japanese. I was young. I hadn't thought about, the next steps. And I slept on a park bench, but I immediately default back to STOP. And I encourage people to give this some thought. And again, in the book, I get more detailed about the story. It was a pretty amazing experience and has stayed with me to this day.
Thanks, Paul, for that. I just had a follow-up on that. You've been a welder, which is working on the shop floor.
Yeah.
And many management books have talked about how does one inspire the shop floor. You've been in the army where you worked there and done some solo stints, and you've been in business. What's one thing which unites all three for you at least?
I think for sure the leaders who got it right, whether it was the foreman on the shop floor or it was the master warrant officer when I was a cadet, they had something right and they walked the talk. I think the one thing that unified the team, regardless of where, and even to this day, I would say that's one of my key beliefs as a leader. We need to walk the talk. So not do as I say, do as I do. And I think that's been a key element. And in the military, you talk about command, right? Command and control. But actually, there is a style of leadership where the leader is in the game, right? With the pack, moving forward together. So I'm a big believer that leader needs to prove that he or she can do as well as enable.